In 1969, Norway discovered oil in the North Sea, and today Norway is one of the richest countries in the whole world. Decades earlier, Nigeria had discovered oil and it became one of the largest producers in the whole world and the very first in Africa. Yet millions of Nigerians still grapple in poverty, with the World Bank reporting about 52.5% of Nigerians in 2025 were living below the poverty line, which is $3 per person per day. Today, Uganda stands at the crossroads between the two experiences. With an estimated 6.65 billion barrels beneath our surface, the government of Uganda looks at oil as a source of a massive economic transformation for this economy. But the question is, will Uganda's oil transform the economy? Or will Uganda learn that oil itself is not enough to transform the economy? This is the Policy Room, and my name is Eboga Brennan Omar. Following the discovery of oil in Uganda, Uganda for very many years had relied on sectors like agriculture, relied on services, and also it had also relied on manufacturing and industry. But following the discovery of oil in 2006, the government of Uganda has looked at oil as a catalyst that will drive massive economic transformation, and it will lead to improvement in the standards of living of Ugandans forever and ever. However, many citizens look at this oil sector as one that is going to create for them jobs, the one that is going to reduce the poverty rates, and the one that's going to improve the living standards of very many people in this nation. But economists do say that oil is a blessing to a nation. However, some economists say that it can be a blessing to a nation or something that is termed as a resource curse. Many countries, for instance, Norway, when they discovered oil, oil has led to massive growth in Norway, and Norway today is standing among the wealthiest nations in this whole world. Secondly, Nigeria discovered oil in a similar time then, but today Nigeria still is struggling with problems when it concerns to poverty and unemployment in their nation. Venezuela also gives us a significant example where it experienced an economic collapse in about 2013, despite Venezuela having one of the largest oil deposits in this whole world. Before we look at this topic deeply, we ask ourselves, are we able or are we ready to start massive oil production? Let us look at what the statistics do tell us. Uganda has an estimated 6.65 billion barrels of oil beneath its surface, with about 1.7 billion barrels believed to be economically recoverable. This puts Uganda as an emerging producer or an emerging exporter of oil in Africa. So, when it comes following the production of oil in this country, massive infrastructure development has already taken place, and this can be recorded in the Albertine region, where the projects like the Tilenga projects are in their final phases, the Kingfisher project is also in the final phase, and the East African crude oil pipeline, the EACOP, is in the final stages. And the government sees that following the completion of these projects, Uganda will start producing oil in this nation. When commercial production begins, Uganda is expected to produce about 230,000 barrels per day. The government of Uganda is expecting massive revenues following the commencement in oil and gas sector, of which this revenue will be collected through the taxes by the government, through royalties, and also through partnership agreements that the government has already signed. This revenue will be essential when it comes to constructing the schools, when it comes to building hospitals, when it starts improving on the projects that the government is already undertaking and improving the standards of living of very many people. Beyond that, the impacts of the oil and gas sector are already being felt in the economy. For instance, when you go to the Albertine region in the areas of Hoima and the areas of Bulisa, massive economic transformation has already started taking place. The roads are already being built, and these roads are leading to the different projects like the Tilengas and the Kingfisher. So this has already improved the infrastructure of that area. Hence, farmers are already benefiting from that oil from the roads that have already been constructed to access the market. Additionally, these projects of the oil and gas sector have already led to the human capital development, especially in education. Many Ugandans are already being trained and have already been trained when it comes to engineering, when it comes to welding, and some are already working with these projects, and hence their standards of living are improving and the economy is benefiting. The local businesses and the local community in that region are building because the demand for the businesses have grown up. When it comes to the market vendors, they are able now to supply their food, and the employees or the workers in these projects are able to come and purchase goods from the markets that are around. Hence, they're already benefiting. The hotel industry is already growing because much of the demand has already been put in that sector of hospitality, because very many investors are coming within and they have to get somewhere to stay. Hence, economic transformation is already beginning to develop in this nation. However, the success of the oil industry is not determined by the number of wells that are being dug every day. The success is determined by how the lives of the citizens are improving, resulting from an investment in that sector. So, when oil and gas sector is growing, it only should be reflected on the life of the citizens, how their standards of living are improving, how the poverty rates are reducing, and how they are benefiting from all these aspects. However, this is the key takeaway for the government of Uganda. The government of Uganda should focus on diversifying the economy. When commercial production of oil begins and revenues are already being generated, the government should focus on collecting much of that revenue and directing it to other sectors of the economy, especially those sectors that have already been supporting the GDP of this nation. The revenues that are going to be collected from oil and gas industry should be directed to agriculture sector, because this is the largest employer in this nation. They should be directed to the industrialization and manufacturing, because industrialization is able to create jobs, is able even to is able to increase the investment in this nation, and much of it should also be directed to infrastructure development, because as a result of infrastructure development, the investors are able to come into this nation and increase on the investment of this nation. Because when we diversify the economy, time will come, time will come in years to come later. Time will come where maybe the production of oil might reduce. But if we strengthen these sectors, the economy will still be competitive. Hence, we shall have achieved the value for money because we have diversified the economy. So one of the misconceptions is that the oil and gas industry is going to create employment. The oil and gas industry is a capital intensive industry. It relies majorly on the machinery, the equipment. So the oil and gas industry can employ people but cannot employ everyone in the whole nation, because not everyone has studied engineering and things related. However, the revenue that will be generated from the oil and gas sector, that revenue is the one that will be leading to employment, because it will be directed to develop sectors that are already employing very many people, and that those sectors that are already growing. Hence, we shall have achieved much effort and the economy will grow. Even though the production of oil increases or decreases, the economy will not be much affected because we have diversified. Additionally, we should look at the aspect of transparency. For any project to be successful, there needs to be that aspect of transparency. So the government should put much focus on the transparency, especially for the oil revenue transparency, the accountability, so that the revenues are able to drive massive economic transformation in this country. Because when we manage all that very well, then massive economic transformation is going to be achieved, because much of the income will be directed towards those sectors. Hence, the country will grow. Like Norway did, the government should look at aspect of creating a wealth fund. The government can come up with an aspect, a wealth fund, where some of the revenues that will have been generated from the oil sector, those revenues can be directed to the wealth fund. We can take, for instance, maybe the government can create another wealth fund, or you can even use the NSF to be a wealth fund, where some of the revenues that will have been generated from the oil sector, if they are directed to the wealth fund, that wealth fund should be able to invest in foreign assets, especially the financial asset, the foreign assets. Why are we doing it like that? Because massive revenue will be flowing to the country. So when we invest when we invest it in a wealth fund that invests in foreign assets, this will shield our economy and prevent it from overheating, because when the economy overheats, it will lead to deindustrialization in this economy. What am I saying there? When there is massive inflow of capital into the economy, this will strengthen the currency of this economy. So when it strengthens our currency, the the goods that are being manufactured in this country, they will be much more expensive than the goods that are being imported. So there will be competitiveness, especially in the manufacturing industry, because if our currency is already strong like this, our goods will be very competitive in the market. Hence, it will lead to that kind of deindustrialization slowly by slowly. So to prevent the economy from overheating up, we should learn, and so that when we invest in that wealth fund, we are able to save for the future. And this is how it will work, that the interest that will be obtained from that wealth fund, that is the interest that should be directed back to the economy, so that the economy is able to benefit from that interest. However, the principal can still remain there, because we are investing for the future. And this will also lead to massive growth of Uganda and shield us from any economic forces that may economic forces that may hinder our development. However, the oil and gas sector is, in summary, the oil and gas sector is a massive opportunity for this country. It is a massive opportunity, and the government looks at it as one that will be a catalyst for economic transformation for this country and move us to a middle income status. But this is a lesson we have to learn. For the countries that have developed and they had oil as their resource, the countries that have succeeded, like the Saudi Arabias, the Qatar, the Norways, they use the revenue obtained from oil to strengthen other sectors of the economy. Because if you strengthen other sectors, even though there is a turbulence in the oil market, we are not too much affected, because we have strengthened other sectors, so we have diversified it. But and in addition to that, the countries that we have seen and have really not doing well, especially when it comes to oil, those are the countries that have relied on oil, and they think that oil alone will solve all their problems. But no, oil cannot solve our problems. Oil can help us to develop other sectors of the economy, so that we grow sustainably and achieve sustainable growth in this country. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Policy Room. My name is Eboga Brennan Omara. See you next Saturday as we discuss sustainable issues that will drive economic transformation, and issues that will improve on our nation.